The billionaire's fiancé buried his twins alive, but the maid's miracle exposed everything. When Lucia Santos pulled those two small bodies from the earth that cold California night, dirt caked under her fingernails and tears streaming down her face, she had no idea she was holding the only evidence that could bring down a billion-dollar fortune built on blood. What looked like a desperate rescue of 5-year-old twins buried alive was actually the unraveling of an international killing spree that had claimed 14 children across 3 continents. But what this immigrant housekeeper discovered about the elegant French fiancé in the days that followed would expose a predator so calculated, so ruthless, that even seasoned detectives couldn't believe one woman was capable of such evil. And the evidence she uncovered would prove that the Blackstone twins were never meant to survive their father's wedding day. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We want to see how far this story travels. Now let us continue. The Blackstone estate was silent in the way only extreme wealth could afford. No traffic noise, no neighbors, just a distant whisper of Pacific waves crashing against the cliffs 200 feet below. It was 2:47 a.m. when Lucia jolted awake in her modest room above the garage, her heart already racing though she couldn't say why. The digital clock cast a faint blue glow across her worn quilt. Outside her single window, the security lights illuminated the manicured grounds and pools of amber. Everything looked still, perfectly still, but something had yanked her from sleep. She lay motionless, barely breathing, listening. Nothing, just the soft hum of the estate's climate control system, the kind of expensive silence that billionaires paid contractors to engineer. No voices, no footsteps, no creaking floorboards. Yet her pulse wouldn't slow. Then she heard it, faint, so faint she almost dismissed it as her imagination. A rhythmic thumping, distant but deliberate. Thump, thump, thump. Her breath caught. She sat up slowly, straining every sense. There was again a muffled, desperate sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Lucia swung her legs out of bed, the cold floor shocking her bare feet. She'd worked for Jonathan Blackstone for 18 months now, ever since his late wife Clara had succumbed to cancer. She knew this estate intimately. Every alarm system beep, every pool filter cycle, every automatic sprinkler sequence. She'd learned which stairs creaked, which doors stuck, which windows the wind rattled on foggy nights. But this sound? This was wrong. She pulled her thin bathrobe over her nightgown and moved to the window, pressing her face against the cool glass. The view overlooked the rear grounds, the infinity pool that seemed to pour into the ocean beyond, the outdoor kitchen with its stone pizza oven, and Gabrielle's showcase garden. That garden. The French fiancé had spent 3 months obsessing over it, importing roses from Provence, hiring a landscape architect from Napa. Everything had to be perfect for the engagement photos in next month's Architectural Digest spread. Except something wasn't perfect now. Even from 2 stories up, Lucia could see it. The flower bed near the pool's edge looked disturbed. Dark soil scattered across the white marble pavers. One section of earth raised slightly, as if recently filled. Lucia's brow furrowed. She'd helped the gardeners plant those roses just yesterday morning. The beds had been immaculate when she brought the twins in for lunch. Then the sound came again. Clearer now. A weak, strangled moan that made every hair on her arm stand up. Her pulse hammered in her throat. An animal, she thought desperately. Maybe a raccoon fell into something. A possum trapped under a deck board. But even as she tried to convince herself, her instinct screamed louder. That wasn't an animal. She hesitated for only a moment, hand on the doorknob, mind racing through options. Wake Mr. Blackstone? Call security? But what if she was wrong? What if it was nothing, and she looked foolish, paranoid? Gabrielle already thought she was too attached to the twins. She'd overheard the fiancé tell Jonathan just last week. That maid watches him like a mother hen. It's intense. But then the sound came a third time, unmistakably human. A muffled, frantic knocking from underground. Tap, 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 like small fists beating against wood. Lucia's blood turned to ice. She didn't think. She ran. The night air hit her like a slap as she burst through the service entrance. The grass was wet with coastal fog, soaking through her thin slippers within 3 steps. She ran across the lawn, her robe fly behind her, her breath coming in visible puffs. Each step felt like wading through mud as dread pulled at her chest. Please let me be wrong. Please let this be anything else. When she reached the disturbed flower bed, she dropped to her knees. The soil was loose, freshly turned, still soft and crumbling. She pressed her palm against it, feeling the wrongness, the violation of earth that had been dug and refilled within hours. Her hand trembled as she leaned closer, pressing her ear to the ground like she'd seen in movies. And then she heard them. 2 voices, children's voices. Weak, gasping, desperate. Help! Please, can't breathe? No, Lucia whispered, her voice breaking. No, 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 this isn't possible. Oliver, Isabella, the twins. She knew their voices as well as her own heartbeat. For one frozen second, panic locked her muscles. Behind her, the Blackstone mansion loomed dark and silent. 3 stories of glass and steel, everyone asleep. Mr. Blackstone in the master suite. Gabrielle in the guest wing she claimed as her own. The twins were supposed to be in their beds on the 2nd floor, tucked in by their father hours ago. This couldn't be real. But the muffled, terrified whimpering beneath her hands was absolutely, horrifyingly real. She lurched to her feet and sprinted to the garden shed, her mind screaming at her to move faster. Inside, she grabbed the first tool she found, a spade with a long wooden handle. The metal felt like ice in her shaking hands. If there's nothing there, she whispered to herself, voice hitching with barely controlled terror, I'll fill it back in. No one has to know I lost my mind. But she knew. She already knew. She attacked the earth with a violence that shocked her. The first shovelful came away too easily. Soil still loose, still fresh. The second came faster. Then the third. She was digging like her life depended on it, because 2 lives did. Sweat poured down her face despite the cold. The smell of damp earth filled her nose, mixing with the salt air from the ocean. Her muscles burned. Her lungs screamed. Her heart felt like it would explode from her chest. Thunk. The shovel struck something solid. Wood. Lucia's stomach dropped. She threw the shovel aside and fell to her knees, clawing at the dirt with her bare hands. Soil jammed under her fingernails. Her fingers scraped raw against rough wood as she cleared away the earth faster, revealing a wooden surface. Not 1 box. 2 boxes, side by side, each about 3 feet long. Child size. Oh, God, she sobbed. Oh, God, please. She pressed her ear against the first box. A faint rasping sound came from inside. Breathing. Shallow. Rapid. Terrified. She moved to the second box. The same. Both children were alive. Barely. The boxes had small holes drilled in the lids, ventilation holes that would buy maybe an hour of air, maybe less. Her fingers found the edge of the first lid. It wasn't nailed, just wedged tight with the weight of soil. She braced her feet and pulled with every ounce of strength in her body. The wood groaned, shifted, then gave way with a crack that echoed across the silent grounds. Inside lay Oliver Blackstone, 5 years old, blonde hair matted with dirt, face pale as death, eyes closed, lips tinged blue. His small chest barely moved. His tiny hands were pressed against the lid, fingernails broken and bloody from clawing, trying to escape. Lucia's scream ripped through the night. Oliver! She reached in with trembling arms and lifted his small body from the wooden coffin. He was limp and cold against her chest, his weight impossibly light. Baby, I've got you, she choked out through sobs. I've got you, sweetheart. She laid him gently on the grass and turned to the second box, wrenching it open with renewed fury. Isabella lay inside in the same horrifying state. Pale, barely breathing, her princess pajamas covered in dirt, her small hands scratched and bloody. Lucia pulled her out, cradling both twins against her body, feeling their weak heartbeats fluttering like trapped birds. Breathe, she pleaded, tears streaming down her face. Please breathe. Stay with me. Oliver's eyelids fluttered. A tiny, rasping breath escaped his lips. Alive. They were alive. But for how much longer? Lucia didn't waste another second. She gathered both children in her arms, one on each side, their heads against her shoulders, and she ran, barefoot across the wet grass, through the side gate, down the long, winding driveway toward the estate's entrance. Her bathrobe caught on branches. Her slippers fell off somewhere in the dark. She didn't stop. The twins' bodies bounced limply with each step. "Hold on," she gasped between ragged sobs. "Hold on, babies. Please hold on." The main road was a quarter-mile away. The hospital was 8 blocks beyond that. She ran under streetlights that blurred into streams of gold. No cars passed. No witnesses. Just a desperate woman carrying 2 dying children to the pre-dawn darkness, her voice hoarse from screaming for help that wouldn't come. By the time she crashed through the sliding doors of Mercy Pacific Hospital, she could barely stand. Her legs gave out, and she fell to her knees on the polished floor, still clutching Oliver and Isabella. "Help!" she screamed, her voice cracking. "Please, someone help. They're not breathing right. Someone buried them. The Blackstone twins. Please, please help them." The emergency room exploded into controlled chaos. Doctors rushed forward. Nurses pulled the children from her arms with practiced efficiency. A gurney appeared, then another. Shouts of code blue pediatric 2 patients echoed off the walls. Hands tried to pull Lucia away, but she couldn't move. She knelt on the floor, covered in dirt, her robe hanging open, her hands trembling violently. She watched them wheel Oliver and Isabella through double doors marked trauma, their small bodies surrounded by a swarm of medical personnel. Someone guided her to a chair. She didn't remember sitting. Time became meaningless. Seconds? Minutes? An hour? She stared at her hands, caked with dirt and streaked with the twins' blood from their torn fingernails. The smell of earth still filled her nose. Her ears still rang with the sound of their muffled cries from beneath the ground. Finally, a doctor appeared, pulling off latex gloves. His face was grave but not hopeless. "They're breathing," he said quietly. "Both of them. Weak, but breathing. You got them here in time. Another 10 minutes." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Lucia closed her eyes and sobbed, deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere she didn't know existed. Relief and horror crashed over her in waves. Someone had buried those children alive. Someone had dug graves in the garden, built wooden boxes with just enough air holes to prolong the suffocating, had sedated 2 innocent 5-year-olds and placed them in the earth to die slowly in the dark. Someone in that mansion had done this, and that someone had expected them to stay buried. By sunrise, word of the twins' rescue had already reached the Blackstone estate. The hospital's calm was shattered at 6:47 a.m. when Jonathan Blackstone burst through the emergency room doors, his shirt misbuttoned, no tie, his face a mask of raw terror. By sunrise, word of the twins' rescue had already reached the Blackstone estate. News traveled fast when a billionaire's children were involved. Emergency dispatchers, hospital administrators, estate security, all connected through phone trees designed for crisis management. Dawn broke gray and cold over Mercy Pacific Hospital. Lucia sat alone in the emergency waiting area, still wearing her dirt-caked bathrobe, her bare feet leaving smudges on the polished linoleum. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She'd tried washing in the bathroom, but the smell of earth still clung to her skin, trapped under her broken fingernails. Dried blood, the twins' blood from their scratched fingers, streaked her palms like rust. Nurses passed with cautious glances. Whispers followed her like shadows. A security guard stood near the vending machines, arms crossed, watching her with the kind of steady surveillance reserved for people who might run. Lucia pulled her robe tighter, suddenly aware of how she must look. Wild-eyed, filthy, a woman who'd burst through the doors screaming about buried children. The twins were stable. A nurse had told her an hour ago. Sedated, oxygen saturation improving. Under observation in the pediatric intensive care unit. But Lucia couldn't see them. Family only, the nurse had said, not quite meeting her eyes. The automatic door slid open with a pneumatic hiss. A woman in her early 40s strode through, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun. sharp eyes sweeping the waiting room with a practiced assessment of someone who'd seen every kind of human behavior. Detective Maria Castellanos. Her badge clipped to her belt caught the fluorescent light as she approached. Lucia Santos? Her voice was neutral, professional, but there was steel underneath. Lucia stood quickly, knocking her knee against a chair. Yes, are the children. They're alive because of you. Castellanos pulled out a small notebook, clicking her pen with a sound that felt unnaturally loud. I need to understand exactly what happened tonight. Walk me through it. From the beginning. Lucia took a shaky breath and started talking. She described waking at 2:47 a.m., the strange sound that pulled her from sleep, the disturbed earth in the garden, the boxes buried 6 inches down. She described Oliver and Isabella's faces when she'd opened those wooden coffins, their bloody fingernails, their blue lips. Castellanos wrote, without looking up. When Lucia finished, the detective tapped her pen against the notebook. So you just heard sound from underground, in the middle of the night, and decided to dig up the garden. It wasn't like that. What was it like, Miss Santos? Castellanos finally met her eyes. You live alone on the property, correct? In quarters above the garage. Yes, but... And you work night shift sometimes? Walk the grounds. Sometimes I can't sleep. I check the doors, make sure everything's locked. So you wanted to stay at night. Castellanos made a note. Do the Blackstones know about this? Lucia's stomach dropped. The way the detective phrased it made her sound paranoid, obsessive. I was just being careful, making sure the family was safe. Safe from what? I didn't think there was... Lucia's voice faltered. She sounded crazy even to herself. The automatic doors burst open again. This time it was Jonathan Blackstone, and he looked like a man barely holding himself together. His dress shirt was misbuttoned, one side of his collar higher than the other. No tie. His salt and pepper hair stood at odd angles, and his eyes were red-rimmed, wild with panic. Lucia. He rushed toward her, nearly tripping over a chair. Where are they? What happened? The security company called me. They said the twins were in the hospital. That someone... His voice broke. They said someone tried to kill my children. Mr. Blackstone. Castellanos stepped between them. I'm Detective Castellanos. Your children are in the PICU, stable condition. A doctor will brief you shortly. Right now I need you to. But Jonathan was already pushing past her, reaching for Lucia's hands. You found them? Security said you brought them in. I heard sounds, Lucia said, tears starting fresh. In the garden. They were buried, Mr. Blackstone. Someone put them in boxes and buried them alive. The color drained from his face. For a moment, he looked like he might collapse. Then the doors opened a third time, and everything changed. Gabrielle Lauron swept into the emergency room like she was arriving at a gallery opening. Even at dawn, even in crisis, she was immaculate. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves over her shoulders. Her cream cashmere sweater and tailored slacks looked like they'd been pressed moments ago. Only her face betrayed emotion, eyes red and glistening, lower lip trembling. One hand pressed to her chest in elegant distress. Jonathan. Her voice broke on his name. She rushed to him, her heels clicking sharply against the floor, and he turned automatically, opening his arms. She fell into them, sobbing against his chest. Oh, God, Jonathan, I came as fast as I could. The babies, are they? They're alive, Jonathan said hoarsely, stroking her hair. Lucia saved them. Gabrielle's eyes flickered to Lucia over Jonathan's shoulder. For just a heartbeat, less than a second, Lucia saw something cold and calculating in that gaze, something that vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. Then Gabrielle pulled back, her face crumpling into fresh tears. Lucia, she breathed, moving toward her with outstretched hands. You found them? You saved them. She grasped Lucia's filthy hands between her own pristine ones, squeezing hard. Her skin was ice cold. Thank God you were there. Thank God. But her eyes told a different story. Up close, Lucia could see the fury burning beneath the performance. The hatred. Ms. Lauron. Detective Castellanos stepped forward. I'll need to speak with you as well. Can you tell me where you were between midnight and 3 a.m. this morning? Gabrielle released Lucia's hands and turned, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue that appeared from her designer purse. I was asleep, in my room at the estate. I didn't hear anything until security called. She looked at Jonathan. I can't believe this happened. In our home. When did you last see the children? Castellanos asked. Around 8 last night. I made them their bedtime hot chocolate. It's become our little tradition, European style with real cream. Gabrielle smiled sadly. They love it. Oliver always asked for extra marshmallows. Her voice caught. I tucked them in, read them a story. Everything was perfect. They were safe. Lucia's breath hitched. The hot chocolate. Every night for 2 weeks. Gabrielle had made it herself, never letting anyone else help. And tonight, the twins have been found buried, barely breathing. Detective, Gabrielle said softly, glancing at Lucia with what looked like concern but felt like poison. I don't know if this matters, but Lucia has been under a lot of stress lately. We've all noticed. Castellanos' pen paused. What kind of stress? She's been very attached to the children. Intensely so. Gabrielle chose her words carefully, each one landing like a stone. Sometimes I'd find her in their rooms at night, just watching them sleep, taking pictures on her phone. She said she wanted to remember them at this age. Gabrielle's eyes filled with new tears. I thought it was sweet. Maybe I should have said something. That's not. Lucia started, but Jonathan was staring at her now, confusion creeping across his features. Jonathan knows I walk the estate at night, Gabrielle continued. Don't you, darling? We've talked about it. How she seems troubled. I even suggested you might offer her some time off, mental health support. I never. Lucia's voice came out strangled. Ms. Laurent, Castellanos said. Do you know who might have done this? Gabrielle hesitated, then said quietly, I hate to even suggest it, but security footage. You should check the security footage from last night. 20 minutes later, Castellanos had pulled up the estate security recordings on her tablet. Lucia watched her own blurry figure on the screen. Time stamped 12:47 a.m., carrying a shovel across the lawn toward the garden. The video cut off before showing what happened next. That's when I heard them, Lucia said desperately. I went to dig them out. Or to bury them, Gabrielle said softly. She looked at Jonathan, tears streaming down her perfect face. I'm so sorry. I know she's been with her family for over a year. But sometimes people, they become obsessed. They convince themselves they love the children more than the real parents do. She touched his arm. Maybe she thought she was protecting them. Maybe she wasn't thinking clearly. This is insane, Lucia whispered. But even as she said it, she could see Jonathan's expression changing, doubt creeping in, the detective taking more notes, hospital staff watching with new suspicion. Castellanos closed her tablet. Ms. Santos, I'm going to need you to stay local. Don't leave the county. We'll have more questions. Am I under arrest? Lucia's voice shook. Not at this time. But you're a person of interest in an active investigation. After the detective left to check on the twins, Lucia found herself alone again. Jonathan had gone with Gabrielle to the PICU, family only. The other staff members who'd arrived. The estate manager, the head of security, gave her wide berth, whispering to each other by the coffee station. An hour later, Lucia sat in the hospital cafeteria, a cup of cold coffee untouched in front of her. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Through the windows, the sun was fully up now, turning the parking lot a harsh, sterile white. She looked down at her hands. Still dirty, still smelling of earth. The hands that had clawed through soil to save 2 children. The hands that now made her look guilty. She could see it happening in real time, the narrative shifting. Gabrielle's perfect performance, the convenient security footage, the whispered concerns about her obsession with the twins. She'd gone from hero to suspect in the span of 2 hours. But she knew what she'd heard. She knew what she'd found. And she knew with absolute certainty that Gabrielle was lying. Lucia's hands curled into fists. If the police wouldn't find the truth, she would. She'd find proof. She'd expose whatever darkness lived behind Gabrielle Lawrence's elegant mask. "I know what I heard," she whispered to her reflection in the dark coffee. "I know what I found, and I know she's lying." Outside, through the cafeteria windows, she could see Gabrielle and Jonathan standing together in the parking lot. Gabrielle's head rested on his shoulder, his arm wrapped protectively around her. And even from this distance, Lucia could see Gabrielle's eyes, open, dry, and staring directly at the cafeteria windows, directly at her, watching, calculating, winning. 3 days passed in a fog of suspicion and silence. Lucia wasn't allowed back into the hospital. Family only, the nurses said, though their eyes told a different story. Suspect, those eyes said. Person of interest. Detective Castellanos had been clear. Remain at the estate, available for questioning. So Lucia stayed in her small quarters above the garage, a prisoner in everything but name. Below, estate security had been doubled. Cameras that hadn't existed before now dotted the property. She could feel them watching, always watching. But the twins were alive. That's what mattered. That's what kept her breathing through the crushing weight of accusation. On the 4th day, Jonathan's attorney delivered the toxicology results in person. Lucia watched from her window as the black Mercedes pulled up to the main house. An hour later, estate manager Patricia Chin knocked on her door, her expression carefully neutral. The doctors found something, Patricia said, in the children's blood work. What? Lucia's heart hammered. Lorazepam. It's a sedative. Powerful one. Patricia's voice dropped. Both twins had high levels in their systems. That's why they barely remember anything. Why they've been so drowsy and confused. Lucia's legs went weak. She gripped the doorframe. How did they? That's what everyone's trying to figure out. No one in the household has a prescription for it. The police are investigating possible exposure routes. Patricia's eyes held a question she wouldn't voice out loud. Did you give it to them? After Patricia left, Lucia sat on her narrow bed, mind racing. Lorazepam. Sedatives. She'd read about them online during her sleepless nights. Benzodiazepines that cause drowsiness, slurred speech, memory loss, muscle weakness. All the symptoms the twins had exhibited in their hospital beds. Someone had drugged Oliver and Isabella. Drugged them so they'd be too weak to fight, too confused to remember. So they'd slip into unconsciousness while buried alive. And then it hit her. A memory so obvious she couldn't believe she hadn't connected it sooner. The hot chocolate. For the past 2 weeks, maybe longer, Gabrielle had been making the twins special bedtime drinks. Every single night. European style, she called it, with real cream and Belgian chocolate. She'd bring the twins their steaming mugs personally, always with that perfect smile. Sit with them while they drank every drop. It's our special tradition, Gabrielle had told Jonathan when he'd offered to help. Don't ruin the magic. No one else was allowed to prepare it. Not Lucia. Not the cook. Just Gabrielle. Alone in the kitchen with crushed pills and melted chocolate and 2 trusting children who loved her. Lucia's hands shook as she reached for her laptop. She'd been ordered to stay at the estate, but no one had taken her internet access. If she couldn't prove her innocence to the police, she'd find another way. She started with what she knew. Gabrielle Laurent. Age approximately 35. French. Engaged to Jonathan Blackstone. Former grief counselor who'd helped him through Clara's death before becoming romantically involved. Gabrielle's Instagram was a masterpiece of calculated perfection. Photos of her and Jonathan at charity galas, wine tastings in Napa, romantic dinners overlooking the Pacific, pictures with the twins, Gabrielle reading them bedtime stories, braiding Isabella's hair, teaching Oliver to make crepes. The caption, my new family, my second chance at happiness. The comments were filled with heart emojis and congratulations. Everyone loved Gabrielle. Beautiful, elegant, compassionate Gabrielle who'd helped a widower heal. Lucia scrolled back further. Gabrielle's first post was from April 2023, a sunset photo with a quote about new beginnings. Nothing before that. No childhood photos. No college friends. No digital footprint extending back more than 2 years. That was odd. Everyone had digital history now. Old Facebook posts, tag photos from years ago, embarrassing high school graduation pictures. But Gabrielle Laurent seemed to have materialized fully formed in 2023. Lucia tried Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. Same pattern. All accounts created in 2023 or later. It was as if Gabrielle hadn't existed before meeting Jonathan. Then Lucia remembered the hospital news coverage. Local stations had filmed the scene, ambulances, police taped Jonathan and Gabrielle embracing in the parking lot. She found the segment on Channel 7's website and screenshot Gabrielle's face. Clear image. Good resolution. She uploaded it to Google's reverse image search. Fingers trembling on the trackpad. The results loaded, and Lucia's world tilted. The same face appeared in a European news article from 2019, but the name underneath read, Isabelle Moreau. Lucia clicked the link, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. The article was in French, but Google translated, Tragedy strikes de Vries family. Twin daughters drown in boating accident. There was Gabrielle, or Isabelle, photographed at a memorial service, elegant in black, dabbing tears with a handkerchief. The article described her as the fiancée of Laurent de Vries, Belgian diamond heir. His 6-year-old twin daughters had died when their boat capsized during a family vacation. Isabelle had been traumatized but survived. According to a follow-up article from 3 months later, Isabelle had inherited 47 million euros from de Vries' estate. He had updated his will just weeks before the tragedy. Shortly after receiving the inheritance, Isabelle Moreau vanished. No forwarding address. No contact with friends. Just gone. Lucia's hand shook so badly she could barely control the mouse. She searched again. Gabby Fontaine, Switzerland, 2021. Another article. Another tragedy. This time a Swiss banker named Klaus Bergman, whose 5-year-old twin sons died from carbon monoxide poisoning while sleeping in their beds. His wife, Gabby Fontaine, a French-Canadian grief counselor he'd met after his first wife's death, had been sleeping in another wing of the house and survived unharmed. The photograph showed Gabby at the funeral. Same face, same elegant grief, same perfect tears. Gabby inherited $63 million in life insurance. 3 months later, she disappeared. Lucia kept searching, her horror mounting with each discovery. Elena Russo, engaged to Spanish hotel magnate Carlos Martinez. His 8-year-old twin girls died in a suspicious car accident in 2020. Elena inherited his Madrid properties worth 35 million euros, then vanished. Marie Beaumont, married to French tech entrepreneur. His twin boys died from an allergic reaction despite no known allergies. Marie received 28 million euros. Disappeared. Sophie Chun, engaged to Singaporean shipping tycoon. His twin daughters were found dead in their swimming pool. Sophie inherited $89 million. Vanished. 7 families. 7 sets of wealthy twins dead in accidents. 7 fortunes inherited. 7 women who looked exactly like Gabrielle Laurent, all disappear without a trace. And always it was twins. Always heirs who stood between the woman and massive fortunes. Always fathers who'd been widowed or divorced, vulnerable and grieving. Lucia screenshot everything. Bank transfers she found in archived financial records. Obituaries. News articles in 5 different languages. She created a timeline spreadsheet, her hands shaking so badly she had to retype entries multiple times. Gabrielle Laurent didn't exist before 2023 because she'd been someone else before. 7 someone elses. A phantom who moved between countries and identities like a ghost, leaving dead children and gutted fathers in her wake. Oliver and Isabella were supposed to be victims 14 and 15, and Lucille was supposed to take the blame. The next night, when the main house finally went dark at 2 a.m., Lucia slipped out of her quarters. She disabled the camera covering her door 3 hours earlier, a trick an ex-boyfriend who worked security had taught her. Snip one wire, and the feed loops the last 30 seconds of footage indefinitely. She moved through the shadowed grounds like a ghost herself, barefoot on damp grass to muffle her footsteps. The service entrance to the main house was always locked, but she had keys. 18 months of trusted service before everything fell apart. Inside, the mansion was silent. She knew Jonathan slept in the master suite on the third floor. Gabrielle had taken the guest suite on the opposite wing, claiming she wanted to give him space to process the trauma. More likely, she wanted freedom to move unseen. Jonathan's home office was on the second floor, overlooking the garden where his children had nearly died. Lucia's chest tightened as she crossed the threshold. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a gunshot. Every shadow looked like Gabrielle emerging to finish what she'd started. She couldn't risk turning on the lights. Her phone flashlight would have to do. She moved to Jonathan's desk, mahogany, pristine, organized with the precision of a man who built an empire on attention to detail. His computer was password protected, but the filing cabinet wasn't. Third drawer down, she found what she was looking for. Legal documents stamped with a law firm's letterhead. Whitaker and Associates. Gabrielle's recommended attorney. Lucia pulled out the revised will, dated 3 weeks earlier. Her hands shook as she read. The language was dense, full of legal terminology, but the meaning was crystal clear. If anything happened to Oliver and Isabella Blackstone before Jonathan's marriage to Gabrielle Laurent, his entire $4.3 billion estate, including his tech company shares, real estate holdings, and offshore accounts, would pass directly to his surviving spouse upon his death, rather than being held in trust for other heirs or distributed to Jonathan's siblings. The previous will had divided everything among the twins, with guardianship going to Jonathan's brother Michael. This new will erased all of that, and the wedding date, circled in red on Jonathan's desk calendar, 5 days after the night the twins were buried alive. Gabrielle had been hours away from marrying Jonathan, hours away from eliminating the only obstacles to a fortune that would have made her previous scores look like pocket change. The twins would have been found dead in their beds. Tragic carbon monoxide leak, perhaps, or a gas explosion in their wing of the house. Jonathan would have been devastated, and Gabrielle would have been there to comfort him, to help him heal, until eventually he died too, another tragic accident, leaving her everything. But Lucia had heard the children crying through 6 inches of soil, and now Gabrielle needed a new plan. Lucia photographed every page of the will with trembling hands. She photographed the attorney's contact information, the wedding invitation already printed and ready to mail, the life insurance documents, $50 million in policies on Jonathan, freshly updated with Gabrielle as sole beneficiary. Then she heard it, a footstep in the hallway. Lucia froze, phone light extinguished, heart hammering against her ribs. Another footstep, soft, deliberate, coming closer. She slipped behind the door just as it opened. Silhouetted against the hallway nightlight stood a figure in silk pajamas. "Gabrielle, I know you're here, Lucia," Gabrielle said softly, her French accent thicker in the darkness. "I can smell your cheap soap." She stepped inside, and Lucia could see the faint gleam of something in her hand, a syringe. "You should have stayed in your place," Gabrielle continued, moving toward the desk. "But you people never do. You always think you can be heroes. Save the day. Become part of the family." Her laugh was cold. "Your staff. You were always going to be the suspect. I chose you the moment Jonathan hired you. The perfect scapegoat. Isolated. No family. Obsessed with the children." Lucia's phone was in her pocket, still recording. She pressed herself against the wall, barely breathing. "Those twins should have died," Gabrielle said. "Quick. Clean. Then you'd be in prison, and I'd be planning my wedding." She ran her finger across Jonathan's desk. "Now I'll have to be more creative. Maybe you break in tonight, deranged, obsessed, and poor Jonathan has to defend himself. Tragic accident. His children's would-be killer finally stopped." Lucia bolted. She crashed through the office door, sprinting down the hallway as Gabrielle's scream of rage echoed behind her. Footsteps pounded. Lucia hit the stairs and took them 3 at a time, her phone still clutched in her hand, still recording. She burst out the service entrance and ran across the grounds, Gabrielle's shouts waking the house behind her. Lights blazed. Security alarms wailed. Back in her quarters, door locked, Lucia's fingers flew across her phone. She sent everything to Detective Castellanos. The screenshots, the photographs of the will, the recordings of Gabrielle's confession, The timeline of dead twins across 3 continents. The text she sent was simple. I have proof. Gabrielle Lauron isn't who she says she is. She's killed before. The twins weren't her first targets. Through her window, she could see the mansion blazing with light. Security guards pouring out. Jonathan's silhouette in his bedroom window. And Gabrielle, standing on the terrace, staring directly at Lucia's quarters. Even from this distance, Lucia could see her smile. I have to warn Jonathan, Lucia whispered to the empty room. And I have to protect those children. Because she knew with absolute certainty that Gabrielle wouldn't stop until she finished what she started. The only question was, would anyone believe Lucia in time? 6 days after being pulled from the earth, Isabella Blackstone woke up screaming. The pediatric intensive care nurses were used to night terrors in trauma patients. But this was different. The 5-year-old's shrieks echoed to the ward, raw and primal, the kind of sound that came from somewhere deep and broken. By the time they reached her bedside, she was sitting upright, eyes wide and unseeing, clawing at her throat like she was suffocating. Can't breathe, she gasped. Too dark. Can't breathe. They sedated her, called Jonathan at 3 a.m., increased her monitoring. But the nightmares came back the next night, and the night after that. As the lorazepam finally cleared her small body, the memories that had been chemically suppressed began surfacing like drowning victims breaking through water. Lucia wasn't supposed to be there. Detective Castellanos had made that clear. No contact with the victims. But on the 7th night, when the nurse on duty stepped away to check on another patient, Lucia slipped past security using a borrowed visitor badge and a baseball cap pulled low. Isabella's room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of monitoring equipment. The little girl lay curled on her side, awake despite the late hour, clutching a stuffed rabbit that had seen better days. When she saw Lucia in the doorway, her face crumpled. Lucia! She reached out with both arms, and Lucia was across the room in 3 steps, gathering the child against her chest. Isabella buried her face in Lucia's shoulder and sobbed. Great, shaking sob that felt like they might break her small frame apart. I'm here, baby, Lucia whispered, stroking her hair. You're safe. I've got you. The pretty lady, Isabella choked out between sobs. The pretty lady did it. Lucia's heart stopped. What did you say? Isabella pulled back just enough to look at Lucia's face. Tears streaked her cheeks. Her voice came out in broken fragments, like she was assembling a puzzle she didn't want to complete. She said, we were playing hide and seek. A special game. Just us. Secret game. Gabrielle? Lucia's voice was barely a whisper. Isabella nodded, fresh tears spilling over. She gave us the sleepy milk that night. The chocolate, but it tasted funny. Wrong. I told Oliver not to drink it, but she said it was medicine to help us sleep better. For our dreams. The little girl's hands twisted in Lucia's shirt. Then everything got fuzzy, heavy, like my body was made of sand. Lucia's throat tightened. The lorazepam, crushed into the hot chocolate Gabrielle had prepared every night for 2 weeks, building up in their systems, making them compliant, drowsy, vulnerable. What happened then, sweetheart? Lucia asked gently. Everything got dark. Then I woke up and I was in the box. A wood box. It smelled like dirt and it was so dark I couldn't move right. My arms didn't work. Isabella's breathing quickened, panic rising. Oliver was calling my name, but I couldn't see him. We tried to push the top open, but it wouldn't move. The dirt was too heavy, and we couldn't breathe right. The air got used up and her voice rose to a wail. Sure, I know. Lucia rocked her gently. But you're out now. You're safe. I found you. I scratched and scratched. Isabella held up her small hands, now bandaged where her fingernails had torn. But no one came. I thought we were going to die in there. I thought. She broke down completely, and Lucia just held her, whispering reassurances against her hair. When Isabella finally quieted, Lucia heard a small voice from the doorway. She was testing them. Oliver stood there, one hand on the doorframe like he needed it for support. He looked older than 5. Something in his eyes had aged beyond childhood. He shuffled into the room, his hospital gown too big, his feet bare. "Oliver," Lucia breathed. "You should be in bed." "I can't sleep." He climbed onto his sister's bed, and the twins curled against each other automatically. Two halves a whole that had nearly been severed forever. Oliver looked at Lucia with those two old eyes. "I remember more than Izzy. I didn't drink all the chocolate. I poured some of the plant when Gabrielle wasn't looking because it tasted bad." Lucia's pulse quickened. "What do you remember?" "The week before," Oliver said quietly, "I couldn't sleep one night. I went downstairs for water, and I heard sounds in the garage. So I looked." He picked at the edge of his blanket. Gabrielle was there. She had two big wooden boxes. She was drilling little holes in the tops with Daddy's power drill. Click, 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 click. Lots of holes. Lucia's blood turned to ice. The ventilation holes. Gabrielle had been preparing the burial boxes a week in advance, calculating exactly how many holes would give the twins just enough air to survive until she wanted them found, or to suffocate slowly if her timeline changed. She had a timer, Oliver continued. She put it inside one box and closed the lid and watched it, like she was testing how long the air would last. His voice dropped to a whisper. She saw me. I thought she'd be mad, but she smiled, that pretty smile, and she said, "Oliver, you're up late. This is a surprise for Papa. A special game for your birthday. Don't tell anyone, or it won't be special anymore." "Did you tell your father?" Lucia asked, though she already knew the answer. Oliver shook his head, shame flooding his small face. I promised to keep the secret. And then she put us in the boxes, and I remembered, and I knew I helped her. I told her it was okay to have boxes because I didn't tell." "No." Lucia gripped his shoulders firmly. "Listen to me, Oliver. This is not your fault. None of this is your fault. She tricked you. She's very good at tricking people. But you didn't do anything wrong." But she could see he didn't believe her. The guilt lived in his eyes like something heavy and immovable. 2 hours later, Lucia sat across from Jonathan Blackstone in a private conference room at the hospital. Detective Cassiano sat beside him, notepad open, expression carefully neutral. The overhead fluorescent lights made everyone look sickly and hollow. Lucia's laptop sat between them, screen glowing with the evidence she compiled. Screenshots, obituaries, bank records, the revised will, 7 faces that were all the same face, wearing different names like masks. "This is Isabel Moreau," Lucia said, pointing to the first photo. 2019, Belgium. Engaged to Laurent de Vries, Diamond Air. His 6-year-old twin daughters drowned in a boating accident she survived. She inherited 47 million euros. She clicked to the next image. This is Gabby Fontaine. 2021, Switzerland. Married to Klaus Bergman, banker. His 5-year-old twin sons died of carbon monoxide poisoning. She inherited $63 million. She continued through the timeline. 7 families. 14 dead children. Always twins. Always heirs. Always massive fortunes that passed the elegant woman who'd appeared in each grieving father's life at exactly the right moment. And this, Lucia pulled up the final document, is your revised will, Mr. Blackstone, drafted 3 weeks ago by an attorney Gabrielle recommended. If anything had happened to Oliver and Isabella before your wedding, your entire estate would have passed to your surviving spouse upon your death. She met his eyes. Your wedding was scheduled for 5 days after someone buried your children alive. Jonathan's face had gone through several shades of white during her presentation. Now he looked like a man made of paper, fragile and ready to disintegrate. "This is insane," he said, but his voice held no conviction. "Gabrielle wouldn't. She loves those children. She's been nothing but supportive. The twins remember Mr. Blackstone." Lucia's voice hardened. "Isabella remembers Gabrielle giving them sleepy milk that tasted wrong." Oliver watched her drill ventilation holes in wooden boxes a week before they were buried. She told him it was a birthday surprise and made him promise not to tell. She pulled up the toxicology report. Both children had lorazepam in their systems, a powerful sedative. Gabrielle made them hot chocolate every single night for 2 weeks. She never let anyone else prepare it. Jonathan's hands shook as he reached for the laptop, scrolling through the evidence himself. She watched his face as understanding dawned. The horror, the denial, the terrible, crushing realization that the woman sleeping in his house had tried to murder his children. "We need to bring her in," Cassiano said, already reaching for her phone. But before she could dial, the conference room door opened. Gabrielle Laurent stood in the doorway, immaculate as always in a cream silk blouse and tailored pants. Her eyes swept the room, taking the laptop, the documents, Lucia's face. "Jonathan," she said softly, "I've been looking everywhere for you. What's going on?" Castellanos stood. "Ms. Laurent, I have some questions." "Of course." Gabrielle stepped inside, her expression perfectly calibrated to show concern and confusion. "Is this about Lucia's allegations? Because I brought evidence of my own." She pulled a tablet from her designer purse, setting it on the table. Security footage played. Clips of Lucia walking the estate grounds at night, standing outside the twins' bedroom doors, photographing them while they slept. All real footage, but edited, stripped of context, arranged to look obsessive and sinister. "I have statements from staff members," Gabrielle continued, pulling out notarized documents. The cook, Patricia Chun, the night security guard, all confirming Lucia's increasingly erratic behavior, her fixation on the children, her claim that they needed protection from unnamed threats. She looked at Lucia with what appeared to be genuine sorrow. "I believe she's having a mental health crisis, perhaps triggered by isolation, working alone in a wealthy household where she felt excluded from the family she so desperately wanted to join." "These photos are doctored," Lucia said, but even her own ears it sounded weak. "Are they?" Gabrielle pulled up image metadata, timestamps, security codes, all apparently authentic. She turned to Jonathan, touching his arm gently. "I know this is difficult. She saved the children, and we're grateful. But perhaps she buried them first, then rescued them to become a hero, to become indispensable to you and the twins." "That's not," Lucia started. "The photos you show to me are clearly manipulated." Gabrielle said calmly, "I've never been to Belgium. I've never used those names. Any forensic analyst can confirm those images are altered. This is a jealous, unstable employee trying to destroy our family because she's obsessed with my fiancée." Castellanos looked between them, and Lucia could see the calculation happening. Circumstantial evidence on both sides. No definitive proof. A skilled predator who'd been preparing for this moment for months against a housekeeper with no resources and no alibi. "I can't arrest anyone on what we have here," Castellanos said finally. "Ms. Laurent, I'll need you to come to the station for a formal interview. Ms. Santos, same for you. But neither of you is under arrest at this time." Gabrielle smiled, small, gracious, wounded. "Of course, detective. I want to help in any way I can." She glanced at Lucia, and just for a heartbeat, her mask slipped, the smile turned cold. Triumphant, "I'm 3 steps ahead," her eyes said, "I've always been 3 steps ahead." That evening, back in her quarters, Lucia stared at her phone. The text had come through 20 minutes ago from an unknown number. "You should have stayed in your place. Housekeeper. Curiosity kills. And so do I." Attached was a photo, Lucia sitting in her room, taken from outside her window. Someone had been watching. Recently, a second text followed. "The children remember too much. Accidents happen in hospitals all the time. Monitor malfunctions. Wrong medications. I'll finish what I started." Lucia's hands shook so badly, she nearly dropped the phone. Gabrielle was warning her. The twins were still in danger. As long as they could testify, as long as their memories were clearing, they were witnesses who could destroy her. Lucia pulled up Gabrielle's social media. The latest post, uploaded an hour ago, a photo of Gabrielle in a hospital lobby, holding flowers, looking tearful and devoted. The caption, "Visiting my precious Oliver and Isabella tonight. Family is everything. Praying for their continued recovery. Hashtag Blackstone Strong, hashtag Family First." The post had been liked by local news stations. Channel 7 had commented, "We'll be there at 8 p.m. for an interview. The community wants to hear from you. Gabrielle. Hashtag hero stepmother. 8 p.m. Gabrielle would be at the hospital for a devoted fiancé photo op, and she'd have access to the twins' rooms, access to their 4 lines, their medications, their monitoring equipment." Lucia looked at her laptop screen, at the evidence that hadn't been enough, at Detective Castellanos' business card sitting beside her keyboard, at the sleeping mansion through her window where a predator planned her next move. The police couldn't protect Oliver and Isabella based on circumstantial evidence. Jonathan was still conflicted, still caught in Gabrielle's web, and in 3 hours, Gabrielle would have access to 2 vulnerable children who'd witnessed her crimes. If those twins were going to survive the night, Lucia would have to act alone. She changed into dark clothes, pocketed her phone, fully charged, downloaded a recording app. She had one advantage. Gabrielle thought she'd won, thought Lucia was isolated, powerless, defeated. "I saved them once," Lucia whispered to her reflection in the darkened window. Outside, the Pacific crashed against the cliffs, relentless and cold. "I'll save them again, even if it costs me everything." She grabbed her keys and headed into the night. The hospital's night shift changed at 3 a.m., a 15-minute window, when corridors emptied and attention scattered. Lucia had learned this during her previous visits, watching patterns, memorizing the gaps in surveillance. She arrived at Mercy Pacific at 2:30 a.m. wearing borrowed janitorial scrubs. Rosa Delgado, the night custodian who believed her story when no one else would, had handed them over with tears in her eyes. "Go save those babies," Rosa had whispered. "I'll swear I never saw you." The pediatric ward was dim, most children sleeping under the hum of medical equipment. Lucia's heart hammered as she slipped past the nurse's station, head down, pushing a cleaning cart for cover. Security cameras dotted the ceiling, but she kept the blind spots Rosa had mapped out for her. Oliver and Isabella's room was at the end of the hall, door slightly ajar. Through the gap, Lucia could see both twins sleeping peacefully, Oliver in the bed by the window, Isabella closest to the door. Their monitors beeped steadily. Breathing normal. Safe. For now. Lucia checked the time. 2:47 a.m. She positioned herself in the bathroom attached to the twins' room. Door cracked just enough to see out. Her phone was set to record, propped on the sink edge. Every muscle in her body coiled tight with tension. She knew Gabrielle would come. The text message had been a promise, not just a threat. The children were witnesses. As long as they could testify, Gabrielle's carefully constructed identity would crumble. She'd spend decades in prison, multiple life sentences across jurisdictions. But if the twins died tonight, their fragmented memories would die with them, and Lucia would remain the prime suspect, the unstable maid whose allegations looked like the delusions of a jealous employee. Minutes crawled past with agonizing slowness. 2:55 a.m., 3:02 a.m., 3:11 a.m. Lucia's legs cramped from standing motionless. Her breathing sounded too loud in her own ears. Then, at 3:17 a.m., the door opened. A figure slipped inside, scrubs, surgical mask, hospital badge clipped to the waistband. But Lucia recognized the graceful movement, the elegant posture. Gabrielle Laurent moved like she belonged everywhere she went. Gabrielle closed the door softly behind her, then reached up to pull off her mask. In the dim glow of the monitoring equipment, her face was cold and emotionless. All traces of the devoted fiancé stripped away. This was the predator underneath, finally revealed. She moved to Oliver's bedside first, pulling 2 syringes from her pocket. Even from a bathroom, Lucia could see the clear liquid inside. Potassium chloride, a massive dose that would stop a child's heart in minutes, mimicking cardiac arrest in a patient who'd been through severe trauma. Nearly impossible to detect. The perfect murder. Gabrielle held the syringe up to the light, checking for air bubbles with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this before. 14 times before, if Lucia's research was correct. Her hand moved toward Oliver's for a line. Step away from them. Lucia's voice cut through the darkness like a blade. She stepped out of the bathroom, phone in hand, camera recording, every second captured. Gabrielle froze. For a heartbeat, she remained perfectly still, syringe hovering inches from Oliver's foreport. Then she turned, slowly, deliberately. The mask of grief and elegance that had fooled everyone shattered like glass. What remained was something cold and reptilian, eyes calculating, mouth twisted in fury. You should have stayed in your place, Maid. Gabrielle's voice had changed. The French accent faded, replaced by something harder, Eastern European underneath. Czech, maybe, or Slovak. Her real voice stripped of performance. "Put down the syringes," Lucia said, her own voice steadier than she felt. Her thumb hovered over the emergency call button on her phone. Gabrielle laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You think you've won? You think anyone will believe you?" She gestured with the syringe. "These brats saw me prepare the boxes. They would have ruined everything. Do you know how long it takes to set this up? 8 months of playing the perfect grief counselor, the devoted stepmother, listening to Jonathan's boring stories about his dead wife, pretending to care about his stupid children. I'm recording this," Lucia said, every word. "Good." Gabrielle's smile turned vicious. "Let them hear how I earned that fortune. Jonathan was mine. That $4 billion was mine. I worked for it, more than those spoiled twins ever did. They were just genetic accidents standing between me and what I deserved." She took a step toward Lucia, still holding the syringes. "You know what the beauty of it was? The timing. 5 more days, and I would have been Mrs. Jonathan Blackstone. Then a tragic accident. Carbon monoxide leak, maybe, or a gas explosion in the children's wing. Everyone would have mourned. And eventually, Jonathan would have followed them. Grief-stricken widower, unable to go on. Another accident. So many accidents happen to the wealthy." "You've done this before," Lucia said, backing toward the door. 7 times. 14 dead children. 16, actually. Gabrielle's eyes glittered with pride. "You missed 2 in Argentina. Twin boys, ages 4. Drowned in their pool while the father and I were conveniently at dinner." She examined the syringe in her hand like it was a fine piece of jewelry. "I played the perfect fiancée for 8 months here. Before that, I played the grieving widow, the caring stepmother, the devoted partner. 7 times across 3 continents. I earned every dollar. Every single dollar." Behind Gabrielle, Oliver stirred. His eyes fluttered open. Lucia's heart seized. Gabrielle noticed Lucia's expression shift and turned. Oliver was sitting up, staring at her with wide, terrified eyes. She smiled. That same sweet smile she'd use to gain his trust, to make him drink poisoned chocolate, to make him promise not to tell about the boxes she drilled holes in. "Hello, Oliver," she said softly. "Go back to sleep? This won't hurt much." She lunged for his foreline. Lucia launched herself forward, grabbing Gabrielle's wrist. The 2 women collided with violent force, crashing into the medical equipment. The impact knocked the syringe from Gabrielle's hand. It hit the floor and rolled under Isabella's bed. Alarm shrieked. Oliver's monitor screamed as his foreline pulled loose. Isabella jolted awake, her scream piercing the chaos. Gabrielle fought with desperate, vicious strength, nails raking across Lucia's face, drawing blood. She reached for the second syringe still in her pocket. Lucia grabbed her wrist and slammed it against a bed rail with everything she had. Bone cracked. Gabrielle howled, but her other hand shot out, fingers like claws going for Lucia's throat. They crashed into the forestand. It toppled with a metallic clang. Tubes ripped free. More alarms wailed. "That's her." Isabella's scream cut through the chaos. The little girl stood in her bed, pointing with a trembling hand, tears streaming down her face. "That's the lady who put us in the boxes. That's her. She gave us the sleepy milk." Oliver cried, his small voice breaking. "She said we'd sleep forever. She said Papa would be happier without us." The door burst open. Hospital security poured in. 2 guards, then 3, then Detective Maria Castellanos, weapon drawn, eyes taking the scene in a single sweep. Gabrielle made one final, desperate lunge for the syringe in the bed, but Castellanos was faster. She tackled Gabrielle to the floor, knee in her back, handcuffs already out. "Don't touch me." Gabrielle snarled, fighting against the restraints. "I have rights. I want my lawyer." Lucia thrust her phone forward, hands shaking. "It's all here. Everything. Her confession. The previous identities. The 14, 16 children she murdered. The inheritance schemes." She was about to inject Oliver with potassium chloride. Castellanos took the phone, eyes scanning the recording still playing. Gabrielle's voice echoed from the speaker. "I earned every dollar. I played the perfect fiancé for 8 months. More security arrived. Nurses rushed to check on the twins, who clung to each other in Isabella's bed, sobbing. One of the guards retrieved the syringes, still full, still deadly. As handcuffs clicked around Gabrielle's wrists, her composure finally, completely cracked. Gone was the elegant grace, the perfect performance. What remained was raw, venomous rage. Jonathan was going to waste his billions on those spoiled children, she snarled, her real accent thick and guttural. "I earned that money. Do you know how boring it is? How exhausting? Playing the grief counselor, the loving stepmother? Pretending to care about their pathetic feelings? I worked harder for that fortune than anyone." She jerked her head toward Lucia, eyes burning with hatred. "You'll never be more than a servant, a nobody, and I'll be out in 5 years with the best lawyers as money can buy. You think justice means anything when you have billions." Detective Castellanos pulled Gabrielle to her feet with controlled force. Her voice was cold, professional, final. "Gabrielle Laurent, also known as Isabelle Moreau, Gabby Fontaine, Elena Rousseau, Sophie Chun, Marie Beaumont, and 3 other aliases we've identified. You're under arrest for 8 counts of attempted murder, 7 count of fraud, conspiracy to commit murder across international borders, and in connection with Interpol investigations, 16 counts of murder spanning Belgium, Switzerland, Spain, Singapore, France, Brazil, and Argentina." Gabrielle's eyes widened. 16? You can't prove. We already have. Castellanos nodded to the other officers. Interpol has been tracking you for 6 years. Financial forensics traced $347 million in stolen inheritances to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands, all linked to your biometric data. You're done. As they led Gabrielle away, she locked eyes with Lucia one final time. "This isn't over," she hissed. But the fear behind her rage was unmistakable. Lucia sank into the chair beside the twins' beds, her legs finally giving out. Oliver and Isabella immediately crawled into her lap, both children clinging to her like she was the only solid thing in a tilting world. She wrapped her arms around them and held on. "You're safe," she whispered into their hair. "You're safe now. I promise." 6 months later, the courtroom was packed to capacity. International media filled the gallery. Reporters from Belgium, Switzerland, Spain, France, Brazil, Argentina, and Singapore. The trial of the fortune hunter, as Gabrielle Laurent became known, had captivated the world. Lucia sat in the witness box, hands folded, voice steady as she recounted the evidence that had broken open Gabrielle's 16-year killing spree. Financial investigators testified about the $347 million traced through shell corporations and offshore accounts. Interpol agents presented evidence linking Gabrielle to 6 other identities, 14 dead children, and 7 devastated families. But the most powerful moment came when Oliver and Isabella Blackstone walked hand in hand to the witness stand. They'd grown in 6 months. Taller, healthier, no longer the pale, traumatized children pulled from wooden coffins. Isabella wore a blue dress. Oliver wore a suit that matched his father's. They held hands as they took the oath. "Can you tell the jury what happened the night you were buried?" The prosecutor asked gently. Oliver spoke first, his voice small but clear. "The pretty lady gave us chocolate milk that made us sleepy. Then everything went dark. I woke up in a box. I could hear Isabella crying, but I couldn't see her. We tried to push the top open, but the dirt was too heavy. We couldn't breathe right." He looked directly at Gabrielle, sitting at the defense table in an orange jumpsuit, all elegance stripped away. She told us it was a game. But it wasn't. She wanted us dead. Isabella added, tears streaming down her face. I scratched and scratched until my fingers bled. But the only person who heard us was Miss Lucia. She dug us out when no one else believed us. She turned to look at Lucia in the gallery. The pretty lady heard us, but Miss Lucia saved us. She's our family now. The courtroom was silent except for the prosecutor's voice. These children survived because one woman refused to look away. One woman who heard their cries through 6 inches of soil and risked everything to save them. The verdict came back unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced Gabrielle to life imprisonment without possibility of parole, to be served consecutively across multiple jurisdictions. As bailiffs led her away in shackles, Gabrielle's mask finally shattered completely. She screamed obscenities in 4 different languages. The elegant facade was gone forever. As Lucia walked out of the courthouse into golden afternoon sunlight, Jonathan Blackstone waited on the steps with Oliver and Isabella. He looked different now, older but also lighter, like a weight had been lifted. The twins broke free and ran to Lucia, wrapping their arms around her waist. "We're not just grateful," Jonathan said, his voice breaking with emotion. "Lucia, you saved my children's lives. You exposed a monster. You risked everything when the rest of us were blind." He pulled out papers from his jacket. "I've filed adoption papers, making you the children's legal guardian and co-parent. This is your home now, permanently, forever." Tears streamed down Lucia's face as she looked down at Oliver and Isabella, their small hands gripping her tightly. Cameras flashed around them. Reporters shouted questions. The media had already dubbed her the Maid who saved the Blackstone heirs. But to Oliver and Isabella, she was simply Mama Lucia, the woman who'd heard their cries when everyone else was silent, who'd clawed through earth with her bare hands to save them, who believed them when the world called her crazy, who'd risked everything to expose the truth. 3 months later, the Blackstone mansion stood silhouetted against the Pacific sunset. On the terrace overlooking the ocean, Lucia stood with Jonathan, Oliver, and Isabella. The garden had been completely redesigned. No more roses where the twins had been buried. Instead, a memorial garden with a fountain and flowering trees, a place of life instead of death. Oliver tugged Lucia's hand. "Tell us the story again, about the night you heard us." Lucia knelt, gathering both children close. "I woke up at 2:47 in the morning." As she spoke, Jonathan's hand rested gently on her shoulder. Around them, the mansion that had once been a place of secrets and attempted murder was finally, truly a home. And in a prison cell 3,000 miles away, Gabrielle Laurent, or whoever she'd been born as, sat alone. Her elegant facade crumbled to dust. Her 16-year hunting spree finally ended by a housekeeper who refused to look away when 2 children needed saving. What was the moment that gave you chills in this story? Was it when Lucia first heard the muffled cries from underground? The hospital confrontation where Gabrielle's mask finally shattered? Or that final courtroom scene where Oliver and Isabella testified? Drop your favorite moment in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story kept you on the edge of your seat, hit that subscribe button because I share true crime stories like this every week. Stories about ordinary people who did extraordinary things when evil came knocking. Stories that prove one person can make a difference, even when the world tells them they can't. Don't forget to like this video to help more people discover Lucia's incredible story. These are the heroes we need to celebrate. The ones who refuse to look away, who listen when others are silent, who risk everything to save the innocent. See you in the next story. Stay vigilant, stay brave,